Well, good evening, everyone. My name is Steve Swart. I'm a Member of Parliament for the African Christian Democratic Party. And because I was quite intimidated by the big audience tonight, I thought I'd invite my colleague Maury to back me up as well. Only joking, but I've been in Parliament since 1999, and I bring warm greetings from Reverend Kenneth Meshwe, the founder of the ACDP, a mighty man of God. And, you know, we're all about kingdom work. And we were up in Kwakwa last week, canvassing door to door, and we came to house, and as good believers, there was an 88-year-old lady there, and our president asked Insu to, you know, how are you doing? And, you know, are you saved? And she was unsure. And right there, he brought her to the Lord. Prayed a prayer of salvation for her. The next thing, there were two gogos next door, and they heard him pray and said, no, we also want to give our hearts to Jesus. So salvation came to that house, and that's what the ACDP is all about. It's about kingdom work. And I've been honored to serve our leader, Reverend Kenneth Meshwe, since 1999 in the Justice Portfolio Committee. My background is that of law. I'm the chief whip of the ACDP in Parliament. I'm the only whip, but I'm the chief whip as well. That means you're a member of the Chief Whips Forum. So but it's a very exciting time in our nation. It's a time for us, and I just want to honor all the ACDP people that are here tonight, the leaders, the councillors. Thank you. You guys are stars, and we just need to just push through this last 3 weeks. There's a change coming. Yes. And there's such a good change coming. And I did a tour through Parliament today, through the burnt Parliament, that is almost significant of our state of the nation. I was in Parliament on the day Parliament burnt down. And it was significant, I think, to a certain degree, of the laws that have been passed there, and it's time it's been destroyed, and there's something new that needs to arise. And it's interesting, today Parliament was handed over to the construction people to start demolition and rebuilding. So it was quite a poignant sense for me, but at the same time knowing that all these laws that are being passed, and I'll touch on a number of them, some of them today, so that we can understand the need for our Christian values, our Judeo-Christian values to be reinstilled, and the great threats, such as the Bela Bill that is being spoken about today. So thank you with those few words, Vaughan. Appreciate everyone. Thank you for inviting us, and we look forward to a wonderful evening together. Well, to follow on those speeches is quite a task, but allow the chief whip now. And Vaughan, you'll have to be the honourable speaker as far as time is allocation. But Lisa, I just want to honour you and thank you for the work that you do at Forza. And Christopher, you know, just your input as well, just to focus on the point they made about civil society and the key role that they play. And I just want to really acknowledge both of your organisations. At the end of the day, it's us at the top, the MPs, and the work that civil society does. And I'll give you an example with Forza when we did the domestic violence bill. Remember, Lisa? And in the domestic violence bill, there was a clause about spiritual abuse. Now, you can imagine how broad that is, Christopher. Spiritual abuse, what is that? So you're having a debate as to which church you should go to or which doctrine, and it's spiritual abuse. Be arrested, domestic violence. And the committee asked me, the Justice Committee, and I said, I've got a problem with that definition. And they said, well, Steve, Honourable Swart, please give us a suggestion. So I'm under such pressure, I phoned Forza, and we quickly worked on a definition of spiritual abuse that was acceptable to us. Civil society drafted it, I presented it. The committee accepted it unanimously. EFF as well. So it shows you the partnership that we can. But I do want to make this one point. When it comes to elections, it's key for civil society to say, these are the guys that have been supporting us.
Yes.
It's very important.
It's a very important point.
And I can't emphasize this enough. I appreciate we're all apolitical. It's like churches are saying, we're apolitical, but we're standing for the kingdom values.
Yes.
We're standing for the kingdom values. Why aren't we allowed to speak in churches? No, we're apolitical. But Zuma's allowed, Malema's allowed in the churches.
Yes.
You understand? So I just want to challenge you in this regard. Because when it comes to the Bela Bill, The Bela Bill in Parliament is known as the Mari Bela Bill Sukker's Bill. And I want to honor her because she has been such a thorn in the ANC's flesh. From the word go. Give her a round of applause. And I have never seen an MP operate with such passion. One person. We are 4. We are 1% as the ACDP. But she's got all those ANC members hopping up and down whenever she speaks. And we need your support to get back into Parliament and to improve. Just think if we had double our numbers. So Mari's first speech was on agenda issue. Do you remember that? Her first speech in Parliament, where you're not supposed to be interjected. It's her maiden speech. I suppose now you can't even say maiden speech with binary language. It was her they speech, which I reject totally. And the ANC thought they'd intimidate her, and they interjected her. Well, she took them on. Maury, remember, he said, how dare you speak? This is gender violence. How dare you interrupt me? That speech had 1 million views. Maury for president. I mean, this is the quality of candidates the ACDP presents. But let me just tell you something now on public participation. Today I walked through the burnt down Parliament, and today Parliament was handed over to the demolition squads, the construction squads for the new Parliament. The design of the new Parliament, you'll see on all the media tomorrow, is based on Lachotla, on a tree, meeting under a tree to consult the public. What a joke. What a joke. How dare the ANC say that that's what they do when we know with public participation it is a tick box exercise and they don't listen to the people. And Christopher, we go right back to the abortion bill. When there were hundreds of thousands of pieces of submissions ignored. All these pieces of legislation that are sensitive agenda issues, sexual orientation, there's an agenda that's coming right through from the top, and it's a tick box exercise. And we need to be aware that. But, Christopher, it gives the lawyers time to strategize, to take it to court, and to win in court. Because I agree with you. I agree with you, this Bela Bill is not going to fly. But where is it now? So it's in the second House of Parliament. It went through the National Assembly where we serve, the committee, where Maury caused them grey hairs, absolute grey hairs. And many of them are resigning and not standing again in Parliament because they don't want to face Maury in the next Parliament.
You are very kind.
It was then passed. We voted against it. The ANC used its majority. It went to the NCOP. Again, purported public hearings were held. Again, a whole string of deficiencies, technical problems that the lawyers are all picking up, and we are all picking up as well, for later litigation. And then today, it was supposed to be voted on in the National Council of Provinces, because next week, the National Assembly has got an urgent sitting, and it's on our order paper already. It's on our order paper already to consider it. So, next Thursday. But what happens today? Maury prays, God intervenes, and they make a technical fault and they don't file the correct bill. Can you believe it? They've been working on this for 10 years or how long?
10 years.
At the last moment, the last week or 2 weeks of Parliament, that poor guy that made that technical error in Parliament, I mean, he's worse than the Parliament's burnt down. Because this is crucial for the agenda. Crucial. And now they're going to have a special sitting of Parliament, which is the NCP sitting, which is when? Next week, Thursday, when we're supposed to be dealing with the bill. The process is, I cannot see how it's going to be completed. They're going to try and push it through. So the NCP has to have a sitting. They're supposed to have it today. Then it gets back to us. So the plan was to then push it through the National Assembly next Thursday. Now they can't do it. They can only meet next Thursday when we're supposed to finalize it. If it's not finalized, then Rule 30, is it 333 or 33? 333 of Parliament. Ask Mogezi, he knows the rules better than I do. The bill lapses. The bill lapses. The bill lapses. Is that not encouraging? Now, it's interesting, what it says is it lapses at the end of the day, of that day, unless Assembly decides otherwise. Now, there's a big legal debate, and that could be quite litigation. At what point does the Assembly decide otherwise? I would always think it was now. When the bill lapses, you say, well, we're now saying it will be revived. But how it's been interpreted, the new Parliament then passes a resolution to revive all the old pieces of legislation. And it decides at what point that legislation will continue. Whether it has to have re-hearings, whether it starts in the middle, wherever it is. And so I've got to be careful what I say, but I strongly suspect that it's going to lapse. Or that the ANC calls a special sitting of the National Assembly in the next week. Want, vriende, wie praat Afrikaans hierso? Want benoude katte maak benoude spronge. Nee. Do you know what that means? A cat on a hot tin roof. And the people that are funding this bill and funding the ANC and funding them are saying, why is this bill not passed? You've had 10 years. So friends, this is a great victory, and I want to honor Maury. I want to honor the colleagues that have been working on this because it's a great success. But let me just get quickly to the issue of the agendas and quickly speak, because I've only got another half an hour, about the issue relating to the World Health Organization, which is part of the agenda formers. And I'm not going to get into the whole debate around the vaccinations and all I can say is from the ACDP's perspective, we were opposed to mandatory vaccinations, COVID-19 vaccinations. And we took a number of court cases. We defended a lot of employees that were fired. And let me quickly give you an example. A student of the University of Western Cape, a final year dental student, could not medically be vaccinated. He could not register at the University of the Western Cape to do his final year because he couldn't be vaccinated and he wasn't vaccinated. Nobody would help him except for the ACDP. And we got medical evidence, we briefed lawyers, it cost us a lot of money, and we succeeded in forcing the university to admit that student who is now a qualified dentist. Is that not great? Yes. Isn't God good? So when it comes to those issues, we engaged in a lot of litigation around like ivermectin. It's one of the best drugs around. Just let doctors prescribe it. Why was it banned? Cost us millions of rands. We got a court order by consent that ivermectin can be prescribed. The lockdown, friends. The lockdown. Jonathan, CCFM. What happened there in Muizenberg on the promenade? A dad is walking along the promenade in the lockdown. He's allowed to walk on the cement promenade, but not on this beach. Okay? He's allowed to walk on the promenade with his wife, with a baby, and a little toddler. The toddler gets away from the dad and runs onto the beach. Major drama. The dad quickly goes, because it's now a crime, quickly grabs the little toddler. No, come back. And he's on the beach. Jy's op die strand, meneer. He's arrested with his whole family. He's arrested. Ludicrous. Ludicrous. The police are all on the beaches, keeping people off the beaches while there's such crime in our communities at that time. It's disgraceful. And the army's even called in to keep people off the beaches. How did we ever accept that? How did we ever accept that? Now, Christopher will know that there's a term, de miribus non curat lex, which means the law does not involve itself with trivialities. But more than, how many people do you think were arrested in that time? More than 400,000 people were arrested. One of the best pictures, my sons are graduates, and I'm so proud of them. They've graduates, they've got degrees, professions. The proudest picture I've got of them is not of their graduation, but of them being water cannoned by the police outside Parliament for demonstrating against the lockdowns. Courage, 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 courage. I'm not promoting lawlessness, but sometimes it's a time to stand up for what is right. Now, why am I raising that now? Because something significant is happening on the 29th of May. What is happening on the 29th of May? No, it's not what you're thinking. The World Health Organization will be meeting to pass the pandemic treaty and the amendments to the international health regulations that will have a severe impact on the national sovereignty of countries when it comes to your public health. And that is the agenda. Thankfully, African countries have come and tried to block it. And there's been a lot of amendments. But this pandemic treaty is to try to bring everyone, as it was a lockdown, the whole world locks down, except for a few countries that didn't. Sweden, they just continued, to bring everyone into line with the agenda, to prepare for the next lockdown. And don't think it's not going to happen, because part of the agenda with all these issues is a worldwide agenda. And so let me just quickly tell you this, because nobody in South Africa knows this is happening. Except that the ACDP led a debate in Parliament on this issue. We led a debate in Parliament. We highlighted the dangers, because the executive, they're the ones that negotiate international relations. And then in 2 or 3 years' time, they'll come back to Parliament and they'll say ratified. And in my 25 years, Parliament has never changed a treaty. Never. Because it's too late, basically. And the amendment to the international health regulations is amendments of a treaty that has already gone through Parliament. So I don't even know if it's going to come through Parliament. But nobody's even talking about this. Why is it such a concern? Because what we know is now, what we know is our government was bullied into signing these COVID-19 treaties. And the contracts with Western pharmaceutical companies, they now know, they have admitted the long-term effects and efficacy of the vaccines are not currently known, and there may be adverse effects. That's what our government signed into. Forget about the litigation on this. The adverse reactions is vast through our countries. Vast. And we are continuing to help people with those adverse reactions. But the part of this amendment, there are 3 points why this is so important. The new articles, firstly, where up to now international treaties were always non-binding. You could, and it was recommendations. Now there is a clause which is still being negotiated. We're hoping it's going to be removed, but that the words non-binding will be inserted, will be taken out. In fact, they will be binding. But what is even more so is clause 13A says member states will undertake to follow the World Health Organization's recommendations, not as just recommendations, but as the new coordinating authority of international public health response. That's the role they're assuming. An unelected body beholden to Bill Gates and company. What is even more concerning is that clause 42 says that state parties undertake to what were previously merely recommendations to implement them without delay, including on the private sector. So this is very far-reaching, and what we did when we raised this, because it talks about take measures to ensure non-state actors operating in their territories comply with the measures. That's you, that's civil society. Non-state actors, private businesses, charities, churches will comply with these regulations. We will not allow this to happen. We will not allow this. We've raised it in Parliament, and we're going to ensure that this treaty, the pandemic treaty, must come back to Parliament, and we will ensure that we meet under a tree and have public consultation on this.
Very good.
That we meet under the tree. They're going to build Parliament under a tree, they'll make it look like under a tree, and that there's proper public consultation where the public can come and share their concerns, share their adverse reactions, share that they were fired. This is what we undertake to do with this pandemic treaty. But the challenge legally, Christopher, is this amendment to the international health regulations. We were not sure it's going to come back to Parliament at all, because some of the amendments to that have already kicked into law. And that is a massive challenge in terms of international law. But let me tell you, I asked you the question about how many people were arrested during the lockdown. 400,000 on trivial offences. But thankfully, the ACDP is around in Parliament. And thankfully, the ACDP's member on the Justice Committee is the most senior member on the Justice Committee. He's been there a few years. And thankfully, we understand the biblical concept of being salt and light and influence. And when I raised it in the committee, I said, Chairperson, have you thought about the 400,000 people that have been arrested? And many of them have paid an admission of guilt fine. Christopher, what does that mean? Once you pay an admission of guilt fine, you've got a criminal record.
Yeah.
Most of those people will not be able to get jobs. Most of those people will not be able to travel internationally. You will not qualify for a visa because you've got to, have you got a criminal record? For a trivial offense of not putting on a mask or the beach issue. But thankfully, the ACDP came through the help of God with his wisdom, and we persuaded the committee to change the law. And we changed the law with the Judicial Matters Amendment Bill. Doesn't that sound so great? And the Judicial Matters Bill is changing the Criminal Procedure Act that all those people that got criminal records can apply to have them expunged. Isn't that a lovely word? Expunged. Dit beteken verwyder. Removed. Dit bestaan nie weer nie. But just think if we weren't there. Just think if we weren't there. One of the few voices speaking out against this World Health Organization agenda. And I think, friends, it's very important for us to realize the significance of this little band. 4 of us. How many was it with Daniel? 4. The 4 of us that we've taken on these moral issues for many years, for 30 years odd.
30 years.
30 years, and what we've stopped. And I'm going to start concluding. I see I've only got another half an hour. But it's so important for us to understand. When the Constitution was written, Christopher, there was an attempt to have a clause inserted into the Constitution that South Africa is a secular state. Now, because our Constitution is largely based on the Canadian and the American model, that would have resulted in the strict separation of state and church within the political realm. We understand the separation as spheres of society. But you would not have prayers in any school. You would not have churches meeting in schools, like Mongezi in many places. You wouldn't be able to have that. If you go down to the gardens here in Cape Town, there's a beautiful statue of Jesus saying, come to me and when you want to drink water, and I will give you water. It's a beautiful scripture, the water of life. In a public place, you wouldn't be able to have that, according to the American model. Thankfully, the ACDP then, under the leadership of Reverend Kenneth Meshwe, organized 50,000 people to march on Parliament under the banner of the Christian voice. Government backed down. They removed that voice, that clause. And in addition, we insisted on the insertion in Article 15 of a clause, which is the Religious Freedom Clause, that religious observances can be held in state institutions. That's phenomenal. We are not a secular state. We are not a secular state. The courts have even admitted that in the OGOD case, Randhart Primary School, that South Africa is not a secular state. So that is, we can build on our Judeo-Christian heritage and oppose these issues. And I'm appalled, Liesel, that a child that does not have the cognitive development to get a driver's license, to buy cigarettes, to buy alcohol, to vote, can decide on its his or her, I use the word his or her, gender. A child does not have the cognitive development to do that. It's contrary to every tenet of law we've ever learned. It's disgraceful. So one last point, another successful point was the attempt to legalize, I'll call it what it is, legalize prostitution.
Yeah.
After we had, over many years, developed the Sexual Offences and Related Matters Amendment Bill, which is a great bill. It took us a long time to tighten up the laws around sexual offences. And we decided not to remove the criminalisation of prostitution, but also to criminalise the clients. On the 30th of November 2022, Cabinet approved the Criminal Law Sexual Offences Amendment Bill to totally decriminalise prostitution. At a time when our immorality is at such a high level of our country, to totally decriminalise it. Contrary to the African Charter of Human Rights, contrary to our legal cases, the Constitutional Court, Jordan versus the State, which found that the criminalisation of prostitution was a constitutionally permissible legislative choice. The Constitutional Court discussed morality even in that case, contrary to the SA Law Reform Commission's report that said various options which was not decriminalised. I believe in restorative justice. I've pioneered that. My heart goes out to women that are forced into prostitution for economic reasons. A restorative justice approach of programs and helping them out of prostitution with economic growth, with job opportunities. Ignored, totally ignored. And they had the gall, the ANC government, to just bring out almost a one-clause bill to decriminalise it without anything of how you're going to regulate it. Now you decriminalise it, but how are you going to regulate this prostitution? Here's our submission, 30th of January 2023. What we've seen in countries where you have legalization, it links to drugs, it links to criminal syndicates, and results in a demoralization of your society, where a husband who might say, oh, well, I feel I'm not going to do it now, but now it's lawful, now I can do it. Breaking down our moral fiber once again. The agenda again, breaking down families, breaking down your Judeo-Christian ethics. And I was absolutely appalled at this, because women then become expendable as objects. And it is contrary to everything. And the civil society, Christopher, civil society, Collective Against Sexual Exploitation, they came up with evidence. They say this creates a facade of legitimacy, hiding behind criminal syndicates. And one survivor said to be prostituted is humiliating enough. To legalize it is to condone that humiliation and to absolve those who inflict it. It is an agonizing insult. That's from a prostitute herself. But thankfully, through the pressure of the ACDP, the bill was removed. The bill was removed and did not continue. So this is another success story of civil society working with us in Parliament, raising good legal arguments, and it been stopped in Parliament. So, dear Vaughan, I wanted to end on a positive note, because at least we can see that we can take hands with civil society. We can push, if you've got men and women that stand up for their values with courage and determination. One with God is a majority. You don't need the majority. You said it yourself, Christopher. One with God is a majority. Thank you very much, and to God be the glory. Amen.